My boss thought he could fire me or bully me into quitting, but I had the last laugh. I was hired for a temp position last year. It was a part-time job that fit perfectly with my uni schedule with a pretty popular, prestigious company. The first couple weeks were great. I got along with my colleagues, and my boss seemed nice enough. After some time, though, everything drastically changed. I still don't know why. My boss tried to get me to agree to a mutual termination of my contract, claimed I was smoking and doing drugs in the office. I obviously didn't. Immediately offered a drug test. Told me that a written record was submitted to HR while refusing to let me see it. Tried to start a fight with me numerous times. Sent me on personal errands during working hours. This post would be 10 pages long if I got into everything he put me through. Suffice to say, it was an awful couple of months. I'm pretty sure that after me not initially agreeing to leave, he tried to fire me, but since he's only in a middle management position within a fairly large company, one of his bosses probably said no for some reason, so I got to stick it out with menial bullshit tasks until the end of my contract. For the last couple months, he completely ignored me, didn't answer my emails, didn't give me any new tasks even though I asked, and then pretended I didn't claim I was being malicious and refusing to work, while there were numerous people present when I asked for new tasks. And yet I stuck around, up until my very last day. Would it have been smarter to leave sooner? Yes, most definitely. But the pay and benefits were good, and above anything else, I didn't want him to have the satisfaction. I wasn't going to let him win. So when my last day came, ironically, he wasn't even in the office and obviously never said goodbye to me. I was ready. I had been keeping track of every single thing that had happened. More than that, I discovered what I believed to be some pretty serious compliance and data privacy breaches. So I sent an email containing all of it in proof, not only to my boss and everyone on our team, but to numerous HR people. Then I handed him my laptop and left. It was the absolute best feeling to know that I was finally free of this job, and that my boss had been trying to instigate a fight for months. Probably thought I was just going to be submissive and go out with a whimper just to get the fight he wanted on my very last day, and not having any way of getting back to me. I obviously immediately blocked his number. I don't really expect there to be any consequences because people like him always get away with their shitty behavior. Maybe HR will give a shit about obvious bullying and why when one of his employees is accused of doing drugs at work, he wouldn't have them do a drug test. As per the fucking contract, lol. Why I was sent away from the office to run personal errands, or why a huge data security breach was left to fester for probably years. Maybe they'll give a shit, probably not. To me, the most important thing is having gotten closure. I just know that he will randomly think of me for the rest of his life, and his blood pressure will spike every single time, because he never got the last word, while I will always be content when and if he crosses my mind because I never gave in to his stupid provocations. And when I did, it was solely for me and the purpose of getting closure, so I'm just going to be proud of having endured a shit job and having the last word in the end. Fuck you, Jerry. Story 2. The time my girlfriend dumped me for my friend. So this happened over a decade ago. I was in my mid-20s, and at the time it happened, no one really asked for all the details. I just gave everyone the short story. So I have not told this story to that many people. Thought I would share it here as I think it is a pretty good revenge story in the end. Me and my ex-GF were together for almost 5 years. We lived together for about 3. She was like the perfect daughter, except she was pretty lazy and could not hold a job. The last year of our relationship was obviously pretty bad, very rocky, and to be honest, just boring. But we decided we would stick together. I even bought an apartment for us, since I was the only one with an income. One was also the only one who paid for it. This is how it ended. Friday. I come home from work, greet my ex-GF, chat about the day, have a shower. After the shower, I get dressed and go grab a cold beer from the fridge. I sit down by my PC, and it does not even have time to boot up, and I hear, "Babe, are you happy?" I'm not happy. I ask, "Happy?" "Yeah, I feel pretty good, blah blah. What do you mean?" I knew what she meant. She tells me she has thought about it and already made up her mind, and she wants out of the relationship. At this point, I have no more fight left in me. She has made up her mind. This is obviously happening. So we have a talk about it for about 2 hours. The talk went really well. She pretty much agreed on everything I said. I was right about everything and so on. Being broken up with sucks, but this time, it was the easiest. So I thought we were on the exact same page about how we were going to deal with the breakup and move forward. I even told her I would not kick her out of the apartment. I would let her live in the apartment, rent-free since she was unemployed until she finds a new place. And I told her I don't want her to take whatever place she gets offered. I want her to move to a place or area she feels safe in and actually will enjoy living in. Like I mentioned, she agreed, said that everything I said seemed very reasonable. The breakup talk went really smooth. She tells me she will be staying at my mother's place over the weekend, so we get some space. My mother was out of town at the time. Once my ex-GF left, I called up my friend and told him what just happened. He told me to come to his place first thing in the morning. We could go grab some breakfast, do something fun, take my mind off things. Saturday, I went over around noon to my friend's place. We had some deep talks. He joked about a bunch of silly stuff my ex-GF had said or done over the years and was trying to keep my mind off of the breakup. To sum up the day, this, of course, for some reason, ended with us getting wasted and throwing a big party at my friend's place. I had a good time actually, was about to text my ex-GF in the middle of the night, something like, I'm really glad we are at least dealing with this breakup like adults, being upfront and all. You were still my best friend, but I actually erased it before I sent it and did not send her a single text. I come home from the party sometime early Sunday morning, like 6 to 7 in the morning. I noticed there seems to be things missing from the apartment, books and curtains. But my still drunk mind does not really process this, so I just go to bed. Sunday, I wake up in the afternoon and can now clearly see things are missing. I start going through stuff, and at some point I panic, and like the hipster I am, I look at my vinyl collection. I flip through the records, and as I suspected, one record was gone. It was a signed copy of a record I bought from the artist himself after a concert. It was even signed Best of Luck and Take It Easy Riff Grinder, so it has my name on it. I try to call her. She will not answer the phone. I call my mother, in case she would have been in touch with her. I call her sister to ask if she had heard anything from her, but no, other than the fact we broke up. About an hour later, I get a call from my mother. She managed to get in touch with my ex-GF, and it turns out she never even stayed at my mother's place. She had been spending the whole weekend at, let us call him Mike's place. Now, at the time, Mike was a friend of mine, a pretty good friend too. I thought, the revenge part. I text my ex-GF that I am happy to see you found a new place to live so quick. Since you obviously don't need me anymore, I thought I will pack up the remaining stuff you forgot to pick up during the night while I was away. If you are not here in 2 hours, I will just leave it outside on the sidewalk for you. Asterisk. Almost those exact words, but in Swedish, since I am Swedish, of course. She called me up a minute later. She was in panic, said she can't make it in 2 hours as she needs to find a van or something that can fit all her stuff. She even asked me if I knew somebody who had a van we could borrow. I told her to get a rental, and in 2 hours the stuff will be nicely packed up and waiting for her outside and hung up. I then proceed to actually pack up her stuff, and she had a lot of stuff. At some point, I find her old MacBook in her closet, of all places. She had not used this computer in 2 years, but I could see the little LED light glowing, indicating it was charged. I open the laptop, and to my surprise, a Facebook page opens. She was logged into a fake account she had made, with one conversation in her chat history. Mike, dating back several months. I could not read it at the time. I was torn up and angry. I just scrolled to the first message to see it was like 4 to 5 months earlier that they had began chatting through her fake profile. It was very clear from the messages I did read, they had initiated a secret relationship and pretty much planned the breakup together. I managed to retrieve her login details, and I call up her sister and give her the details and ask her if she wants to know why we broke up. She can just read the chat logs. I also asked her sister not to confront my ex-GF about the chat logs until I had a chance to speak to her about it first. And she informs me she can't read the chat by herself as she feels so embarrassed about her own sister, so she drove to her parents' place to read it together with their mother. Even better, I also stopped packing up my ex-GF stuff after I found the chat. When my ex-GF arrives at my place, she was expecting her stuff nicely packed up for her, but instead the first thing she sees is the laptop on the ground in the hallway, with the conversation open. Her face goes pale. I then tell her that as we speak, her sister and mother is currently reading through the chat logs, and I then tell her to pack up her own stuff by herself. She did. It took like 5 hours or so, and I just sat on the couch observing her. When I closed the door behind her after she had grabbed that last box, I blocked her everywhere, and have never seen her since. Edit. I forgot to mention that I did get the record back when she came by to pick up the stuff, so you can all rest easy, no records were harmed. I still have it. Story 3. You're working under my license. I don't need you double-checking my work. Okay, I'm a lab technician, and there's this licensed scientist who is practically hated by everyone but our manager and some supervisor that handles lab safety. These two are the only reason he hasn't been fired yet. This guy is so arrogant. He makes a point to tell every lab tech he come across that he's a senior scientist with a license, so work should only be ran when he's physically watching us. Meanwhile, other senior scientists tells us to call them if we need help. It goes without saying that the techs make a point to avoid assisting arrogant asshole whenever possible. One day I was scheduled to work with arrogant and another scientist, good guy. There were two tests that needed to be ran. Arrogant had partially set up the machine for one of the tests when I started checking the pipetting tips to make sure they were all the same size. Recently, someone had accidentally loaded a set of tips with different sizes onto the machine. Fortunately, good guy caught it before the machine started and prevented a crash. Arrogant did not like what I was doing, so he stopped me and said, "What are you doing? You're working under MY license. If you set up the machine, then I would be the one double-checking your work. Since I'm the one setting it up, I don't need you double-checking my work." Had he not essentially told me to fuck off, I was going to replace one of the 50 old tip racks he had loaded because I noticed a few 300 old tips were mixed in. Instead, I placed the tips back and walked away while giving the biggest eye roll possible. I began helping good guy with the second test instead, who had just returned from a meeting and was happy to have me assisting. About 10 minutes later, there was a loud crunch and an "oh shit" from arrogant. As predicted, when the machine picked up the mixed tip rack, it pushed so far down that the tips snapped into pieces and caused the reagents to splash all over the machine's deck. Almost 100 samples were contaminated and 2 hours of work was lost. Arrogant got written up for the lost work and got yelled at by two supervisors. Other techs, and I still refuse to him to this day. Hey guys, this is Reddit Senpai. If you like the stories, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more upcoming stories.